Hi guys, I'm just another guy named James, and today I'm going to be talking about one of my all-time favorite comic book series, the West Coast Avengers. Now, some of you may know that I already talked about the limited series from West Coast Avengers on my channel once, not too long ago, maybe a couple years ago. But today I'm going to be talking about the first story of the monthly series. Now, the monthly series was released about a year after the limited series, and overall, it's basically just a continuation of a lot of the ideas. The creative team, however, is not continued, is not carried over. All these issues are written by Steve Englehart, but they're not drawn there. And these first two, the actual West Coast Avengers issues, are drawn by Al Milgrom, with the third issue, which is actually an issue of Vision and the Scarlet Witch, being drawn by Richard Howell, who is somebody that I've never heard of in my life. And overall, the arc in these stories is nothing to write home about. But yeah, this is, like I said, one of my all-time favorite comic books. So I'm pretty excited to get into it, but first, I think it'll be good to introduce kind of some background elements on some of these characters. Like I said, it had been there in real world time. It had been about a year between the limited series and this monthly series. In universe, it has not been that long. It's been maybe a month or two, but there had been a good handful of appearances by the West Coast Avengers in other comic books. The main one of note being an Iron Man annual where they fought Goliath, and Goliath became and they fought and captured Goliath in that Iron Man annual, and he's their prisoner now. Let's see, some other things worth noting. Hank Pym right now is at an interesting state in his arc as a character, because he is no longer a superhero. After he had kind of gone crazy being Yellow Jacket for too long, he chose to retire, and his wife, the Wasp, also divorced him, which is kind of an L on him, but life's hard. And let's see, what are some other things worth noting? At this time in Avengers history, the Avengers were kind of an official, like, paramilitary group almost. They were an officially liaison group by the U.S. government. And with that came certain bylaws, one of them being that the Avengers had to have a chairman. And the chairman for the East Coast for the main Avengers team is the Wasp right now, and Hawkeye is the chairman for the West Coast Avengers. And with those bylaws, the main one is that the team can only have 6 members, which is kind of an interesting caveat that the writers make for themselves. But I think it overall adds to these stories. But yeah, let's see. Is there anything else that needs to be noted before we hop in? Can't think of anything. So we'll just start our story, which begins with Hawkeye and Mockingbird making out until they hear somebody knocking on the door. So they open it and they find the recently divorced Hank Pym, which excites Hawkeye since he hopes to have Hank become the 6th member of the West Coast Avengers. But Hank says that he won't do it, that he is retired, and that he's only there to figure out how the second Goliath's powers work. We then cut to Wonder Man and Tigra, who are flying to the Avengers compound, and are having some light conversation until they're interrupted by Iron Man, who flies up and starts fighting a bunch of robots right by them. So Wonder Man hops in while he's still holding on to Tigra, since she has recently developed a fear and hatred of water, and I don't really know when that developed, but at some point between the regular and the limited series. And but eventually Wonder Man just really starts taking a beating, so Tigra jumps into the water, leaving Iron Man and Wonder Man to take care of the robots. And after they get the upper hand, the remaining robots retreat, and Wonder Man flies off to get Tigra out of the ocean. We then cut back to the Avengers compound, where we see that Dr. Pym, Hawkeye, and Mockingbird are all questioning Goliath on how he got his new powers. But Goliath won't spill, and the trio are interrupted by the rest of the team arriving to the compound. And they brief Hawkeye on the situation with the robots, which is which results from a menacing laugh from Goliath as the Avengers head to the computer room. And once they're in the computer room, they track the energy signature from the robots, and they track it to this boat in the middle of the ocean. So the team decides to leave Pym at the compound, since they have to leave somebody whenever they leave their base, so he can watch the base and continue his investigation on Goliath. The Avengers then fly off to investigate, and they track the energy signature to a boat which is anchored near some land. So Hawkeye and Wonder Man decide to roll in and scout, and while they're scouting, Tigra explains her origins of Mockingbird. How she was once a superhero called the Cat before she was possessed by an ancient race of cat warriors, and how they have slowly started taking over her mind, hence why she's afraid of water. But Tigra's story is interrupted by Hawkeye's signal. So the entire team goes into the yacht, and as they wander the boat, they eventually come across a room full of welded steel beams, which kind of looks like a neuron center, which strikes everybody as a little weird. But they're soon attacked by Ultron, so the Avengers start fighting back, but Ultron's basically just able to shrug everything off and take the punishment. And he starts up a trap that causes hydraulic struts to come popping out of the beams to try to crush the Avengers. But as the trap is going off, we learn that Ultron wants to take Wonder Man prisoner, but Ultron doesn't care about anyone else. He just wants to kill the rest of them. And after that brief revelation, we see that Hawkeye is able to deactivate the trap with a well-timed arrow. But Ultron got away in all the excitement. Back at the compound, we see that Hank is talking to his ex-wife, the Wasp, who is also, like I said earlier, the chairman of the Avengers. But just as the two begin to talk, the team gets back. So Hawkeye talks to the Wasp, who really wants to send out some heavy guns to help out the West Coast Avengers, but Hawkeye refuses, saying they don't need help, and that this is their chance to prove that they are just as much a team as the main team of Avengers. And their call is then interrupted by an alarm going off, letting the team know that they are under attack. So Hawkeye gives some marching orders, having Tigra guard Goliath and Iron Man guard Dr. Pym, because Hawkeye thinks Ultron's main goal is to kill his creator, Hank Pym, leaving the rest of the team to check the grounds for intruders. As Hawkeye, Mockingbird, and Wonder Man wander through the compound, they accidentally reveal to Ultron, who has been hiding in the shadows, that Pym is at the compound, and that changes Ultron's entire goal from capturing Wonder Man to torturing Pym. And inside the compound, we see that Tigra has come face to face with the Man-Ape, and after a quick fight, which Tigra is actually doing pretty good in, she is attacked from behind by Ultron and is knocked out. And Ultron is basically just goes in to tell Man-Ape that him and Goliath are on their own for getting Wonder Man, because Ultron has some personal business to take care of. And we also learn here that Man-Ape, Goliath, and Ultron are all working for the same person. And we see that next we see Ultron has found Iron Man and Pym, so Iron Man tackles Ultron to try to defend Pym. But before we get to see what happens, we cut back outside where we see an all-out brawl between Man-Ape, Goliath, and Mockingbird, Hawkeye, and Wonder Man. Where the heroes are honestly looking a little shaky. They're not doing too hot. But before we see what happens out there, we cut back inside to Iron Man and Ultron fighting, and they're having an all-out battle, and it's pretty cool. And when we cut away, Iron Man has the upper hand, but outside we see that Wonder Man is getting punched into the ground, and Hawkeye and Mockingbird are blasted by somebody. And that somebody turns out to be Ultron, who off-page has captured Pym and defeated Iron Man. So the villains retreat. But once he wakes up, Hawkeye figures it all out. He puts together that all of the villains are working for none other than the Grim Reaper. So the Avengers decide to pay Vision and the Scarlet Witch a visit, because they just had a run-in with Black Talon and the Grim Reaper. The Grim Reaper, who is Wonder Man's brother, which is an oddism of the character. And like it's all the villains seem to be in cahoots with each other, all working for the Reaper. We then cut to the Reaper's hideout, where we see that Wonder Man and Dr. Pym are trapped in an energy cage. Well, the Grim Reaper explains that he wants to reverse the process that made Wonder Man Wonder Man by combining the Vision and Wonder Man's brainwaves and putting them into a zombie body, which was made by the Black Talon, to return Simon Williams to his pre-Wonder Man state. And if you're wondering, what does Vision have to do with any of this? Vision was programmed by Ultron, but he also had Simon Williams' brainwaves laid on top of the programming. So so Vision's brain is the same as Wonder Man's. And Wonder Man is pretty mad at his brother. He thinks he's insane, and he tries to bust out, tries to fight. But the cage that they're in electrocutes him. And as Pym attends to Wonder Man, he's taunted by Ultron, who is saying that Pym has been hardened by his recent divorce. So Pym fires back that Ultron has gone soft, and that's why he needs to team up with the other villains, which really seems to strike a nerve within Ultron. So he decides that he's going to capture the Vision for the Reaper and beat the rest of the Avengers. We then cut back to the Avengers, who are investigating Wonder Man's past. And eventually they decide to just go talk to Mrs. Williams, Wonder Man and the Grim Reaper's mom, so that they can learn as much as possible. So Mrs. Williams is all too happy to tell them everything, from the boys' childhood rivalries to revealing that Eric, the Grim Reaper, was the one who embezzled money from their family's company. The whole embezzlement thing stems from, for a long time it had been, a big part of Wonder Man's origin had been that he stole money from his family's company, and that's part of why his company went under, and why he ended up working for the Masters of Evil so many years ago in Wonder Man's first appearance. All of that was tied into Wonder Man's origin. So now having it be revealed that Eric was the one who actually stole from the company is an odd choice. And we also learned that Eric had previously stayed in a family home in Las Vegas. And as Mrs. Williams pleads for the Avengers to bring back her sons, Vision steps up to comfort her, and he reveals that he has the mind of her son, that part of him is Simon Williams. And that makes her so happy that she begins to cry, and she welcomes Vision as her third son. We then cut back to the Reaper's hideout, where we see that not only does Eric hate Wonder Man, but he's also racist, which causes some further division among his cabal of villains, specifically with the Man-Ape and Black Talon, because they've got beef. They don't want to be working for a racist dude, let's just put it that way. And Dr. Pym notices this. Dr. Pym's been watching from his cage, and he wakes up Wonder Man because this is just the change in luck that they needed. But Wonder Man is almost paralyzed by fear, and specifically by the fear of dying again, until Pym snaps him out of it, saying, "Now you listen to me, Simon. Forget your powers. I had powers once, all sorts of powers. But what counts is the man who has the power. No power, no other person can fix your life for you. I know that. If you want to die, I can't stop you. But if you don't want to die, I can't help you either. It's on you, so don't go crying on my shoulder. You say you're not a real man, but neither are you a boy. So whatever kind of a man you are, be one." And we then cut back to the Avengers, who are leaving the Williams house and hopping in their Quinjet. And they're flying off to Vegas. But before they make it too far, Ultron attacks the Quinjet, taking it out of the sky. As the jet comes crashing to the ground, the Avengers try to fight Ultron, but Ultron really just keeps putting new holes in the plane, and he's also called in his army of robots to tear up the wings of the jet. So Hawkeye sends Iron Man out to deal with the robots, while everyone else fights Ultron and tries to plug the holes in the hull of the jet. Eventually, Ultron loses an arm, gets an arm torn off, and he tries to run away. And Iron Man catches him, actually. But Iron Man actually has to let Ultron go so that he can help land the Quinjet and not get all his friends killed. So the jet crashes. And it crashes hard, let me tell you what. It's so hard that all of the Avengers are knocked out and captured by Ultron. And Ultron brings them all to the Reaper's base, where they are all filled in on the Reaper's plan to recreate his version of Simon Williams. And after some time to reflect, Wonder Man is brought out of the cage so that he can be lobotomized. But instead, he just starts throwing hands with the Reaper, and eventually Mockingbird drops in, because she was left behind way back at the beginning of the story when everybody went to investigate the Williams brothers. She stayed behind to watch base, because they always had to have someone at the base. But she drops in and lets all the Avengers go, and yeah, so we also see that as the tide begins to turn, as all the heroes are set free, Man-Ape and Black Talon dip. They just run, because they don't feel the need to fight a battle they don't believe in for a person they don't like. So eventually we see an all-out battle between the Avengers and the Reaper's Cabal break out. But eventually the Reaper runs away, and Wonder Man and Vision go after him. And as they look for the Reaper in the caverns, they talk about their newly understood Brotherhood. And they even laugh and share a quick hug in the caverns as they talk about their mother. But eventually they find the Reaper, and they surround him. After they have him surrounded, the Reaper begins to ramble on and on about how he embezzled from their family's company, about how Simon was perfect, about how this, that, and the other. But Wonder Man just tells Eric to stuff it. That he was the one who stole the money. That he was never perfect. And with that, the Reaper, who is the only one who knows the truth, who knows that he was innocent, who knows that Simon was the one who stole the money in the first place, he recognizes in that moment that Wonder Man truly is his brother, that Wonder Man really is Simon Williams. And with that revelation, he also realizes that he was trying to kill his own brother. And he is so overwhelmed that he runs off and he jumps down the chasm that they're in. And eventually he lands with a loud thud. And that's where the story ends. And honestly, it's a pretty darn good one. It's weird, to be sure. It's this weird ties that bind, brotherhood, kind of soap opera-y story. You know, we have your two big family lines here. We have the Pym Ultron Vision, like, fatherhood element of the whole thing. We have the Wonder Man Grim Reaper and Vision brotherhood thing. It's just this weird, it's kind of this weird, like, family ties that bind story, but somehow it works. And I don't really know why it works. It's this weirdly written story by Steve Englehart. Steve Englehart tends to write pretty weird stories, not in a bad way, but they tend to be a little odd. But it just works. The artwork is really nothing to write home about. Al Milgram's pencils are particularly unimpressive, honestly. And on a side note, I absolutely hate the way Al Milgram draws Iron Man. Just look at that. He draws him so bulky with such a small, like, bullet-shaped head. I don't rock with the Al Milgram art in the early days of the West Coast Avengers comic, which is a shame, though, because it gets better as it goes, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. But overall, in this story, the artwork is nothing to write home about. In fact, sometimes it's just really weird, like this. Like the scene where Ultron and Iron Man are fighting, it's just weird art, you know? Weird angles, weird proportions, it's just odd. And it's just an odd way to visualize Iron Man and Ultron fighting. But it's pretty cool. And I don't know what it is that makes this story work as well as it does for me. But it really just, it hits the right notes for me, which is odd. Because normally I would not be all about this, like, nice, touching family drama story. But it just works with the West Coast Avengers. Like, with these, these characters are just cool. Like, and I do like that it's a Wonder Man story, because I like Wonder Man a lot. He's one of my favorite Marvel characters. I made an entire YouTube video about Wonder Man. And yeah, really, he is just a cool character. And it's interesting to see throughout this story how well Steve Englehart understands each of the characters. Because the only thing that I don't like is in the middle of the story where Wonder Man's like all paralyzed by fear, afraid of dying again. That was the exact same arc that he had in the Wonder Man one-shot. That's the thing I made the video about. And it just feels repetitive, having him have to get over it again. But even that, it's not that big a part of the story. It's a couple of pages. And, I mean, it's a good Hank Pym moment, because Hank Pym basically just tells Wonder Man, hey, you gotta get over yourself, man. And you know what? He's not wrong. Wonder Man did have to get over himself. And then Wonder Man locks in and he wins the fight. It's a good story, and I don't really know why I like it as much as I do, though. Because the writing is decent, the artwork is okay, and yet I think the story's I think it's a great comic. Which is weird, because neither of the parts of it are great. So I don't understand why I like the whole so much. But yeah, it's a cool comic. The first issue was inked by Joe Sinnott, who's one of my all-time favorite inkers. He's just good. He just gets it. And then the next one was inked by Kim DeMudler, who I've never heard of in my life, and who who actually really disliked the inking job on issue 2 of West Coast Avengers. And then the last issue, the Vision and Scarlet Witch issue, was inked by Andy Muschinsky, who I've also never heard of. But yeah, it's this weird conglomeration of the art and the writing, and there's just something about it that I like. And what I like about it is how well Steve Englehart gets the characters. Everybody feels pretty right, even if I didn't love the Wonder Man being afraid of dying thing again. It didn't feel completely out of left field, and all the characters are well written, and there's a lot of characters in this story. Let me tell you what, because there's 8 heroes and 6 villains. I didn't even mention one of the villains because she's so weirdly not relevant. Because there's the 8 heroes are Iron Man, Tigra, Scarlet Witch, Vision, Hawkeye, Mockingbird, Wonder Man, and Dr. Pym. And they're the ones who do everything. And that's already a lot of characters. Eight main characters is kind of a lot to keep track of. And then you have your 6 villains. You have Goliath, Grim Reaper, Man-Ape, Black Talon, Ultron, and you have the one that I didn't even mention once throughout this video, Necra, because she's just kind of there, and weirdly in a relationship with the Grim Reaper. It's a weird element of this series, but overall, this little story just works for some reason. The whole Brotherhood element of it is cool. It's very nice. It's cool having Wonder Man and Vision come to this we are family type revelation. It's a very nice story at the end of the day, and I do like it for that, because most comic book stories can be kind of dark and edgy, and I like that this one's just kind of nice, even though it's nice without being so uneventful that nothing happens and no one changes and nothing ever goes wrong. It strikes a good balance for me between the darkness of that comic stories can and do achieve, because some of them are aggressively edgy. And overall, I think it just strikes such a good balance. Maybe I think that's what I like about it, is the balance. like I said, overall, West Coast Avengers is one of my favorite comic book series. It's good from the beginning until almost all the way to the end. And I'm looking forward to talking more about it as we go on. But yeah, really, I think that's all I've got for today. But yeah, I'm just another guy named James, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.